That's my gift to you. You missed yesterday's, which had you were lucky because yesterday was my glory of how long these equations are, and there's so many of them. So today is very simple. Both sessions I'm doing today are papers that I think imply that everything I've done before is wrong. And I didn't mention that yesterday because I'm right. Both of the papers today are about mismatching. This paper is about entrepreneurs being incorrectly matched to businesses. And in the final session, I'm going to talk about a paper where work is incorrectly matched to work. What happens here is entrepreneurs that are mismatched with businesses, that their ability doesn't match the quality of the business, go back into wage work. And so wage employment is the exit strategy for mismatching in entrepreneurship. The paper at the end of the last session is entrepreneurship as a way for people to resolve mismatches in the wage market. They may be really good, but they're geographically constrained, they just can't find the right sort of job. They may live in Des Moines, Iowa, where they're smart, and there's no jobs for smart people there, so they form their own business. But once you accept that we live in a world where there are mismatches, and think about it in academia, how few jobs there are, dual career couples, that you can end up in a job that's much, that you can, if you were more mobile, if the right openings can come up, you really have the ability to get a much better job, but this is what you've got. And you might start thinking, I think I'm going to leave academia, I might as well go into the private sector. My first job was a very heavy teaching job where I taught 8 courses a year. And I came back, I was quitting academia, and then went back on the job market, and I got one job interview. And I got that job. Otherwise, I would have left. It was just those opportunities that there was. So both ways that we actually try and calculate the returns on entrepreneurship stop working in mismatching. But mismatching does explain some of the puzzles. So the way two talks, this particular one is actually about turnover of founders. There's a lot of work on venture capital firms saying, you've got a great business, but we're not going to give you any more funding unless you quickly replace it with a professional manager. Well, there's also turnover in small businesses, in non-venture capital firms, that was there's been some work on serial entrepreneurship, but no work on the spiral rate of founders, how long it takes. So we're going to look at that in this session. And then in this session, in the last session, I'm going to focus on mismatches, a way to explain, remember that graph, that Hamilton graph of fat tails. How do you explain why both tails are fat? It turns out that if you're unusually stupid or unusually clever, you're more likely to have trouble matching, because there's fewer matches at the tail of distribution. As long as you believe that there is a sort of unimodal distribution that's somewhat fat in the middle. And if you're out of tails, there are fewer opportunities for you to find a perfect match, and that's where mismatching becomes important, and that's why we see more entrepreneurship and that. So those are the motivations to hang these papers on, but I think mismatching has some more important consequences. So in this particular case, how does the firm's performance affect the founder CEO's survival of the business? And what does that do if the founder is replaced? What does that do for the business performance? And what happens to the founder after they leave? So we use the mentioned Part1 data set from Denmark, which enables us to, the nice thing about these data is we can tell, we can look at businesses and we can identify who founded it, who's actually running it. They characterize as the employer. And also after they leave, we can then follow them through other parts of the data set to see what they do after they found their business, what they earn, and so forth. And the reason this is interesting is we don't really know much about it. We know a lot about venture capital finance firms, and to some extent, the amount of work that's done on turnover and various other aspects of venture capital firms is because that's where the lamppost is. It's the old joke of, I'm looking for, I lost my keys. Well, why are you looking? Is this where you drop them? No, but it is where the light is. But there's wonderful data on venture capital. But in the United States, venture capital firms account for only about 1.5% of GDP. In Denmark, it's 0.2% of GDP. They're completely unimportant. It is true that they're far more important in terms of job creation than their numbers suggest. But I think the ratio of researchers studying VC firms to small businesses in this context is vastly outweighs the ratio of contributions to GDP. And I made a career out of not working where very smart people work. I didn't have trying to find those areas that are somewhat more thinly motivated. What we know about VCs is that generally founder turnover predicts good firm performance. And one of the conditions of good firm performance is the firm has reached some milestones, technological development, certain levels of revenues. But generally it's associated with maybe the founders themselves, but certainly the VC firms that are considering the second round of funding are expecting a transformation in this firm. This is no longer a startup, it's now needs professional management. And so the very clear prediction is if you compare venture capital firms where the founders replaced with those that aren't replaced, the ones that are replaced, overwhelmingly have better performance data. And generally they have better performance just before, because performance just before is correlated with later performance. The other issue with only looking at VC is that if you only look at one table of distribution, you're generally going to find a monotonic relationship. Yet we keep seeing graphs where if you looked at a sample of the other end of the distribution, you wouldn't find that same, you'd find the opposite. So we can't extrapolate from the monotonic relationship between turnover and performance and VC firms, because they're all the right end of the distribution. Think about Hamilton's work finding that returns to entrepreneurship are negative. Well, his sample, the survey on income program participation, is a bias for income sample. And you compare that with the National Science Foundation survey on engineers and scientists, where in that sample you find returns on entrepreneurship positive. Well, that's bias too, right? So we can't extrapolate from known results in VC and assume that applies everywhere. So, why looking on VC firms? I have this slide of why might it matter. Where are we? It's interesting. I once complained to Boyan managers in a seminar where I was very friend of mine, and I once complained to him that he put up one of his incredibly sophisticated and clever theories. And I said, I just can't see the policy implications of this. And he just looked at me and said, you think I have to be a policy maker as well as an academic? So I never said that again. So there are reasons why it's interesting, but if you have reasons why you find it interesting, where you go, because I'm stuck here anyway. So here is a framework. Obviously, as you can see, I don't do all my work with Jane. But what I found with having Jane as a co-author is that she does all the work and then she explains it to me. So I did the slides. So we're going to frame our analysis. So this paper originally started out, here's an interesting question about family turnover. And Jane found some pattern. She's the empirical person, and I believe I do something, I'm not sure what. And she found, found some patterns today. And I said, the only way to think about this is in terms of mismatching. And the reason I said that was I hadn't been thinking about mismatching with you before, so I'm a one person here. So we motivated it by a question, but I actually think that focusing on thinking about the implications of labor market and entrepreneurship and matching frictions has some more general lessons. So we write down a very simple mismatching model. And then we'll do some empirical tests and this explain what we see. Now, this is not a tested model for a number of reasons. We've seen about half the results that we show were already derived as we're thinking about one law that explain that. I'm currently working on a paper with a couple of co-authors, not including Jane, where I have just banned us writing the theory section before the empirical work because there was so much empirical work done, and I said I refuse to write it that way. So this is not really an objective task because it's about half empirical work came first, that motivated the model, and then there was another set of tests. But the second is what I think is also a useful lesson out of this paper is there's more than one way to write a mismatching model. And the different mismatching models, there's a few others in the context of entrepreneurship. Thompson had two models, 1990 and 1995. They make different predictions. And Sergey Babinski has a new paper, which is also a model based on mismatching. And each of these papers produces different predictions. And the reason they produce different predictions are the auxiliary assumptions, the particular model you choose to write. And so what we're really testing is, yes, mismatching goes on, so that's not contentious. People do find jobs they don't like, jobs they're not very good at. And there's plenty of people who think they deserve better than they can find. So I don't think that's contentious. It's the implementation of a particular way you decide to formalize that We have again, obviously, I love to call that as production function. Q is the quality of the business idea, and theta is the ability of the person. That's sort of back to you, my dimensional ability. Now, it's quite possible that you could imagine a jack of all trades world where theta is some sort of weighted sum of individual abilities, and you could choose a production, you could choose a sort of sub-production function for ability that says balance matters. So that could sort of represent quite a bit of that, but we'll just doesn't think of it as just a simple matter of ability for the time being. So what goes on here is that I know what my ability is, which may be impossible. But I know what my ability is, and I'm establishing a business. I don't know how good the business is. I do know that the smarter I am, the more likely I am that my business is a good idea. I'm smart, so I can run a business, and I can also produce good ideas. So when I establish a business, I discover how good the business is. That's Q1 in the first period. And I know that is a draw. That is a draw from a distribution that is conditional on my ability. Then what happens? In our empirical work, we distinguish between what happens, how far performance predicts turnover, and how turnover predicts subsequent performance. So that means I need two models with a decision, two periods with a decision in the middle. So in the first period, we observe the business quality. Then, tiny goals. Maybe I refine the business, and the environment changes, new competitors come in, and then in the second period is a new business quality, Q2. Q2 is going to be correlated with Q1. You could even make them perfectly correlated, so there's no dynamics, nothing happens. Or you could make them completely uncorrelated. And we're going to do some numerical calculations and vary those degrees of correlation just to show robustness in our main results. And so we have a conditional distribution of G, distribution Q2 depends on Q1, and generally those are positively correlated. What happens is, as soon as I observe Q2, I can decide to do one of three things. I can close the business down, or I can continue to run it down the period for myself, or I can pay a cost, a transition cost C, and hire an outside manager. What that gives me is that frees me up to go back to wage work, so I recover my opportunity cost and have somebody else run the firm. Yes?
So the mismatching that's possible in this framework would be a mismatching between ideas and people.
Yes. Yes. So think about the frictionless equilibrium here. This is actually this is just a marathon. So the frictionless assignment is that if you were a social planner and you said, all these business ideas and all these people, you put the smart person with the best idea all the way down. And what happens is I can't give my idea away or get somebody else to manage my idea until period 2.
Yeah.
So you have the founder running the business, then the founder may leave if the mismatch is strong enough. And we'll see exactly how that works just in a couple of slides. So this is the second half of the model. I simply make a choice. When I hire an outside CEO, I can observe their abilities and I can hire a perfect match. The reason if I have a bad idea, I actually want a dumb CEO. Now, a smart CEO will be able to produce more, but they cost a lot more as well. So the wage that I have to pay the CEO and my opportunity cost as a founder, the opportunity cost of my time is linear in my ability. So I have to trade off the fact that if I've got a bad idea, the marginal productivity, the marginal value of raising the quality of the CEO is smaller for bad ideas than it is for good ideas. At some point, I'm not willing to pay the higher opportunity That is the profits I would earn as a function of business quality if I hire an outside CEO. But if I stay, then we have diminishing returns of business quality. It's homogeneous to degree one in both quality and business, and my manager's ability. Hold the founder's ability constant. What you get is that if the business idea is quality zero, then my profits are minus double effect. That's my opportunity cost. So I have to net that out. If I hire an outside CEO, it's linear, but if the business quality is zero, then it's minus C because that's the transition cost. So obviously you could make the transition cost so low, for example, if the transition cost was zero, the straight line would pass through the origin, and it would be tangential to that line. There would be one particular founder ability that happens to be a perfect match and yields exactly the same return as hiring a perfect match CEO. So this is for a given ability. Suppose we consider another CEO. Maybe I should stick the key part, which is what the choice is made. Given the founder's ability here, then the worst business is for exit. It's not worth paying the transition costs. It's not worth continuing to run the business. There is a central area where continuing to run the business is better because the match is not so bad. Continuing to run the business is better. But there are two areas. One where the founder is too good for business, where they want to be placed, that's in that area there. And on this area is where the founder's not good enough for business. The business turns out to be a great idea, a very meeting professional manager. And this is really what the VC literature looks at, is out there. And it doesn't look at. But you could think of, I think a great example of this in the United States, things like the Wendy's and Burger King and McDonald's franchises, is that there are a number of people who say, setting these up, getting going is actually quite difficult. But once they're established and we've got all the routines and we've hired everybody and we've got all the suppliers and the accounts going, it's actually a very simple business to run. So they tend to then bring in a manager and they'll show up. Maybe they'll actually become serial entrepreneurs and form another one. Or maybe they'll say, you know, I was a lawyer, I had some excess money, I set up a franchise, now I get somebody running it, I go back to being a lawyer. And so that's sort of their example. That's sort of their example that we see. So that's where we are. Consider now another founder who is smarter than this founder. What happens here is that whole graph moves to the right. If that straight line, if the intercept is zero, so there's no transition cost, the straight line will be tangential to both of those. The straight line is the envelope of all these possible curves. What we find is a smarter one, a smarter founder abandons better business, not abandons them, but gets an outside manager for better quality businesses. Now, at this end, says, I'm smart enough to run a business, but I don't need there's no point in paying for an outside CEO. So, you can now think about there's a whole population of these things. What does it look like? Well, this is the analytics of the result, that all of these boundaries we can work out analytically. But the basic idea is very straightforward. There are the basic idea is if I can run where the buttons work. Okay, now we're going to work. So in this middle here is where along the 45-degree line, this is where there's a good match between ability and business quality. So the founder continues to run. Here is the lousy businesses, low business quality, and so that they exit. And up here are great businesses, but the founder's not that smart. So here's where you replace yourself with a smart CEO, and here you've got geniuses with average business ideas. They're good enough business ideas to pay the transition costs, but they're not good enough to keep this founder busy, so they're replaced with a less able CEO. It's all intuitive. The reason this comes together here here is I see that the population of villages is long. Then I assume that everybody gets a business quality job that's a lot more, where the mean of that distribution is equal to market realization of my ability. Then the second period business quality is also a lot more, where the mean of that is equal to the first period. So you've got this level of, so everything's correlated. So on average, my second period, in the second period, my business would be higher or lower, probably on average it's going to be unchanged. Long because these variables have to be positive to be meaningful, and also because I don't want endpoints. The endpoints start creating a lot of uninteresting but complicated action. So here are 40,000 drawers, and you can see here that it's given that the boundaries were analytical, I would get very upset if the boundaries didn't look the same. What we've got down here are the exits at the bottom. You've got the red dots are replacing myself with somebody smarter. The gray triangles over to the right, replacing myself with somebody not so smart, and the light grays of the founders continuing to run their own business. The problem with this is if we're looking at firm performance, we can't separate out ability and business quality because what we see is the outcome being done together. So this is all very nice, but it doesn't tell us much. We have to make a lot of assumptions to say, well, we can separate these things out empirically. So let's take a look at the relationship between first period performance and second period performance that's implied by this model. And this is what it looks like. One of the things that wasn't clear is we can see that the replacement of founders happens in the tails of ability distribution, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see the replacement of founders in the tails of performance distribution, because the lower ability of people are replacing themselves as their business ideas, and the higher ability of people are replacing themselves as their business ideas. So there could be a wash in performance. But it turns out for pretty much any parameters that we play with, and I showed you some variations, we make very large changes in our baseline parameters, that you've got that if you look at first period performance, initial performance, the turnover is more likely both for poor performing firms and for high performing firms. So this is obviously why we're plotting first and the second period performance here. The second thing is, unlike the VC literature does not necessarily predict an improvement in performance in the second period. The red dots up here, the red dots are really the VC dots. They're the ones where you've got a great business idea, you need a better manager. And so they are well above the gray dots. They're well above the 45-degree line. It says if you're above the 45-degree line here, then you're going to have, on average, an improvement in performance from one period to the next. So in the red dots, the VC world, yes, founder turnover is associated with rapid and significant improvement in performance. But we also have this other group over here where founder turnover is, this is not a great idea. I was good enough to make something of it, but my time's better spent elsewhere. Let me get a cheap manager that's profitable, let me get a cheap manager that's right. So that's associated with declining performance. So founder turnover does not necessarily predict improvement in performance. The second thing is the sensitivity. If we were to run a regression of the log of second period earnings on the log of first period earnings, then what we get is the following. Among firms that don't have founder turnover, it should be sort of approximately 1. More importantly, is a relative to where there's turnover. If we were to run a regression here with interaction terms to the regression up there, what we should find is that the coefficient, so with second period performance rises, the coefficient of first period performance should be positive. The interactions, so the effects of the constant term on period, it becomes 0.2, 0.8. Same story. Now, what if we do the reverse? 0.2, 0.8, and then 0.8, 0.2, same story. What if I drastically change the correlation between first and second period idea? The first and second period idea qualities. What we do there is we keep the same distributions of log norms, but we reduce the noise, we reduce the variance of the second period distribution by 90%. So now they're always perfectly correlated. Same story. And in the paper we have like 10 or 12 of these big changes in the parameters. We say, well, what your parameters analytical? You can do what the hell you want, the parameters aren't going to move. The important thing here is a lot of people will analytically draw these boundaries and then say, oh, there's a model that predicts that we will observe people over here and people over there. Well, you will only observe that if there are random draws in the population that actually fill all those spaces. So what these graphs are showing is, yeah, the boundaries, you can see all these boundaries between these points never change. They're analytical boundaries and they don't depend on these boundaries on themselves. But what we do need to check is that every part of the picture is populated with the right changes in boundaries. So that what the model predicts conceptually is something that we predict that we would see in the data set. And it seems like, yes, the middle one in particular, there's not many VC type firms that are being replaced with smart managers. And the reason for that is that in the second period, idea quality isn't that important. So if idea quality isn't that important, then I'm not going to sweat that much about quality of the match because most of the revenue is just driven by how smart I am. So I'm not going to pay a transition cost to get a better match, and match quality is not that important. So, what about alternative models? For Holmes and Schmidt, this is one of the classic models that I mentioned in the very first talk. It was a model that we did entrepreneurial learnings, higher than greater learnings, and that was one of the puzzles we started out with yesterday morning. Over at the top right is the areas where we see found turnover in my model. So in Holmes and Schmidt, everybody has equal ability to manage firms, but they vary in their ability to create ideas. And so some people who are really, really creative, they create a firm and they say, it's stupid for me to manage this firm when I can get somebody who's just as good at being managing because the opportunity cost of my time being busy creating another business is too high. So what you get is you get some people with high ability who found a business and then they leave it and they replace themselves so they can get back to the more valuable work of creating ideas. So over here we have a high business. The businesses that they transfer, there is a transfer cost, so they only transfer good quality businesses. So in the top right is where we see turnover. Low ability, remember, so this is low creativity people. Well, if the business is good enough, they'll operate themselves or they'll close it down. And smart people, if the business isn't good enough to justify the transition cost, they will just close the business down and try and start another one. But the point here is that a really plausible, equally plausible mismanagement model simply based on the ability that it's not in management, it's in idealization. Creates an entirely different story about where you sit from the term, but you only see it in the best businesses. So in Brzezinski's paper, just like analysis, he has exactly the same production function. And so you found the business, and in our model, as soon as you found the business, you get also the quality of the business. In his model, you don't. If you want to work out what the quality of your business is, you have to pay to have it evaluated. I'm not entirely sure what that means, and after 4 years, the survey decided he wasn't entirely sure. Well, 4 years plus he harassed him for 2 hours. Then he could be that those who want to have to access VC capital. The context that he was actually studying was in Japanese academic and partnerships in biotechnology. So there was an effort on the part of the universities to evaluate businesses, thinking about contracts and things like that. So that was sort of 67. But what happens here is, you know that the chances of you being poorly managed are higher than the tales our stories about. So you would be willing to pay this evaluation cost if you are on the tails of the ability distribution. I don't want to continue running a business that's way better than I am if I'm not very good. So I better make sure this is a really good business. I'll pay for the evaluation cost. And if it turns out, after I pay for the evaluation cost, if it turns out it's a really good business, I'll get somebody else to run it. If I'm really smart, I don't want to be wasting my time running a business that will never get going, so I may as well get it evaluated. If I'm in the middle, the odds are I'm probably a reasonable match. I'm not going to be too far away, so I'm down if I'm paying the cost. So in the middle, here, between these boundaries, these businesses are never evaluated. And so the family continues to operate, none the wiser about whether this is good or bad business. Over here, to the right of this, smart people evaluate their businesses. They continue to operate them if they turn out to be good, because they're smart, it's worth their time, or they close them down. And over on the left here, the low ability people evaluate their businesses, and if they're good, they bring in an outside CEO. So over here, what we find is that the high quality businesses are those that have found the turnover. What does it say about performance? Well, it's the high quality businesses run by low ability people. So if you think about how initial firm performance, it's found turnover, it's ambitious, depending on the distributions that they choose for what we see today.
What I'm wondering about when I look at the assumptions that Barbinsky makes and the assumptions that you make, I'm just thinking about, basically, in Barbinsky's world, basically you have to pay to evaluate the business, which I find somewhat unrealistic, at least the first time, because normally the way businesses are evaluated is by performance somehow, right? And basically by running them. Or the other evaluation firms are somewhat different. And on the other hand, in your there's no evaluation taking place at all, right? And there, at least, my question would be, just for the matter of consistency, why are people starting a business and not just selling the idea to the more appropriate guy to start with? I believe if I know,
Yeah. The world that I prefer is humanity, which is it takes time to discover the quality of the business. Because what you observe is the performance, and you know the performance is related to quality plus noise. So you gradually learn. In fact, when I first started writing this model, that's what I wrote down. What that leads to is a lot of statements about, it leads to the math that we did yesterday on hitting boundaries. And I just thought, I think I've done enough of that stuff. So what I did was a setting where you imagine that I have to run a business, the performance, I have to watch the performance and decide how good it is and then make a decision. I'm not going to get somebody else to run it until I have that information because I have to pay a cost. But all that learning is compressed into the beginning of the first period. I found the business and now I know what it is. But imagine that was drawn out over a period of a few years. Then you would have early managers selection model. So that's the world I prefer, and that's why I think so there are other things that go on. If there were no transition costs, then even with the transition costs, there may be some people that are so smart wasn't accessible to the audience that I'm most interested in, sort of management science audience. Whereas the paper later today is in management science. And really the key difference between them is one's got 100 equations and one's got 2 equations. And I'm much more interested in the management science audience than the real economic dynamic audience. So that's why I've got a real simplification on this. And I'm getting older, so the math just gets harder as I get older. Thompson Schmidt, 1995. What's wrong with their 1990 model? Well, it wasn't a 1995 publication. They want merit there, I guess. No, this paper is actually, the first paper was a theoretical model with a little bit of empirics. This paper is a serious empirical model, looking at, and they're really interested in business turnover rather than family turnover. But in our model, we talk about family turnover, but if you are paying RC to bring an outside manager, really you're indifferent between selling it